Hello and welcome to Evinger's Reading Nook. I am here with the Coffin quilt. We're going to continue reading. If you remember from yesterday, we discovered that Rosanna's baby died from the measles. And so Fanny was obviously very sad about that. And she said that she dropped all of her books after coming home from school and finding that out and ran straight to Aunt Betty's. And we know that Rosanna did not marry Johns. We know that really this baby was all she had left of that love she had for Johns. And so it saddens us as well. So we're going to read a few chapters today. If you'd like to join me, don't forget to give my video a like if you enjoy me reading to you. Let's go ahead and continue. The Coffin Quilt by Anne Rinaldi on page 131. Chapter 21. December 1881 through January of 1882. Pa had never seen Rosanna's baby girl, but now he stood with us on a knoll behind Aunt Betty's place when they put the little coffin Floyd had made into the cold ground. My heart was near ruined. Sometimes I thought it wasn't even there anymore inside me. All that was there when I reached was a hollow ache. Little Sarah Elizabeth died. I couldn't believe it. Nobody died from measles. But what haunted me most was, did she look for me to come and see her? Was she waiting? Did she wonder why I hadn't come? My brothers covered the casket with the earth. When that was done, Paul went over to Rosanna and said something soft in her ear. It was the first time he'd spoken to her since she came home after her stay with the Hatfields. Rose's face didn't change at all. She didn't even act like Pa spoke. I don't think she was being ornery. I just think Ro didn't know where she was or who was with her. I think she was in some place all her own, out of reach of us all. Found out later that Paul invited Ro to come and stay with us for a spell, but she refused. She went home with Aunt Betty and our lives went on. In our house, things were quiet. Nobody spoke of the baby or Ro. But not speaking of them was worse. It was like they were in the room with us and kept tripping over them all the time. I wished it was summer so I could stay in my playhouse. I wished I could go to Mary and Tolbert's. I did go to Aunt Betty's a lot to see my sister, but I just as lief as stayed home. Ro didn't talk to me. Most of the time, she wasn't even in the house. She was out in the cold, on that knoll, sitting in the snow at the baby's grave, and no kind of talk or tears could bring her round. John Hatfield hadn't come to the funeral. Everybody thought that was just the awfulest thing, that he didn't show to put his own baby girl into the ground. Nobody gave much mind to the fact that my pa might kill him if he showed. They just went around mouthing bad things about Johns. The stories got better every day, too. We heard he'd run off to follow Belle Beaver. Another story said he'd gone to Florida to do blacksmithing. Still another held that he'd been wandering around in the mountains and was attacked by a bear. And then one day, the first cold week in January, he was there outside our schoolroom on his horse, all bundled up in the cold and waiting. I saw him from the window, and for a minute, it was as much of a jolt seeing the other thing. What was he doing here at our school? Had something happened now to Ro? Was he here to tell me? I could scarce wait to get outside. But then Mr. Cousin wanted to tell me something about my ciphering. By the time I got outside, he was off his horse and talking with Nancy McCoy. And while I stood there like a jackass in the rain, he helped Nancy up on his horse, climbed up behind her, and they rode away. It came to me then. I'd forgotten about this, what with all the sadness of Rose's baby dying. I'd forgotten about the day when me and Mr. Cuslin had cut Belle Beaver down, and she'd said some men had tied her up, some men who wanted Johns to wed their sister. It wasn't my brothers. I knew that for certain. And I recollected how, when we got back to the schoolroom that day, everybody knew where we'd been and what had happened to Belle, and what Mr. Cuslin said to Nancy. It was Nancy McCoy's brothers then who got rid of Belle Beaver. And now, soon as it was decent after his baby died, here was Johns Hatfield come a-courting Nancy McCoy. Because courting is what it was. There was no other name you could put on it. He came every day after that, good weather or bad. Every day, just as we were finishing up in the afternoon, I'd look out the window and there he'd be, all bundled in the January cold, gloves, scarf, everything, even an extra blanket to wrap about Nancy, who rushed out soon as she was given leave. She came every day to school now, too. Middle of winter, lots of kids didn't come. Some were sickly. We'd heard there was some ailment going around that sounded like typhoid. Some parents were afeared to let their children come to school. Other young'uns just didn't have warm clothes enough. Still others didn't bother coming through the snow. But Nancy came. You couldn't keep a thing like that secret, of course. My two big-mouthed sisters told Alifair about it the first day. Then Alifair went off to another of her healing meetings for a week, and soon everybody was pondering it wherever you went. Johns Hatfield had himself another McCoy woman. How could he? Didn't he have the sense God gave a goose? Weren't there enough purty women over to West Virginia? Did he have to cross the river to Kentucky to find one? Oh, people were all fired up talking about it. Why didn't Nancy's brothers stop him? How could he wed her when Ro just lost her baby? Alifair asked. She was home from her healing group, looking wan and saying she was stronger in the Lord and filled with the light of holiness. For once, I was in agreement with her about Ro, especially when she added, how can John stand up to his pa about Nancy when he couldn't stand up to him about Ro? My own brothers were so fired up, they were ready to ride out and tar and feather Johns. Calvin went to visit Nancy. He talked with her brother Lark and came back and told us Lark liked Johns, though Nancy's mother was going about the house slamming things when Johns came to call. That was all Ma needed. She took herself off to visit Nancy's mom and stayed the whole day. I don't think she cared if Nancy married old Lucifer himself. She was doing it for Ro. She came, home grim-faced, and sat down to table. We all waited. Nancy's mom would rather see Nancy dead than wed to Johns, she told us. But she can't do a thing with Nancy, she's so spoiled. Lark is the oldest, and he's taken up for her. He says it weren't Johns's fault he didn't wed Ro. It was yourn, Rennell, and Devil Ance's. He says that Johns is determined to wed Nancy and not let his pa interfere this time. Lark said he's a-going with them when they asked Devil Ance. It went on all through the end of January and into February. Nancy kept coming to school, and Johns kept coming to fetch her after. People were saying no good would come of it, that Johns was touched by the devil, and after what had happened to Ro and the baby, he ought to be run out of Kentucky. But what could anybody do if Lark wouldn't stop them? Then, at the end of February, Johns Hatfield wed Nancy McCoy over in West Virginia. Calvin found out that Lark had gone with Johns and Nancy to Devil Ance's blessing. That Nancy had stood up to Devil Ance, who said he liked her spark and agreed to it. The wedding quieted things down. Some folk from Kentucky even went across the river to help build the cabin for Johns and Nancy. None of my brothers went. Johns and Nancy moved in March, the day my sister Alifair came down sick with the typhoid. Chapter 22, March 1882. I lay in my bed in the dark while the March winds howled outside our house. Was that sound the wind? Or my sister Alifair howling? Might be it was the other thing out there. Or all three. She going to die? Trinvilla asked me. I didn't know which was worse, Alifair's yelling or having Trinville and Adelaide in the room with me for 2 days now. They couldn't be near Alifair. The doctor had come and gone, a rare occasion in these parts, and pronounced Alifair's sickness typhoid. The reason he was gone so quick was that a lot of families in the mountains had it. He couldn't tarry. I don't know, I said. I was in no mood to comfort my sisters. Now that Alifair was down sick, they turned to me. She wouldn't die if Maud let me give her remedies, Adelaide said, or sent for Aunt Corey instead of the old doctor. More screaming. Alifair was what the doctor had called delirious. Ma called it out of her head. She kept yelling for Rosanna. Rosanna, Rosanna, forgive me. Nothing Ro has to forgive her for, Adelaide mumbled now in the dark. Well, she's out of her head, but she knows more than you, I told her. Why can't Alifair heal herself? Trinvilla asked. She goes to all those healing groups. A good question. The great healer was sick. Where was her light of holiness now, her power? I did not feel sorry for her. I just wish she'd stop yelling. I was getting a headache. Ma will be down sick next, I said, if she doesn't get some rest. For 2 days and nights now, Ma hadn't taken to her bed for sleep. Will she die? Trinvilla asked again. I couldn't abide if she died. Hush, I said sternly. How many times had I wished Alifair dead? And with good reason. If she died now, would it be the fault be mine? More howling wind outside. It was still very cold. At that moment, the bedroom door opened and Calvin stood there, all dressed, though it was near the middle of the night. Fanny, get up and dress quick like we're going to fetch Rosanna. Ma says if she comes, might be Alifair will get on the mend. I sat up and stared at him, backlit from a lantern in the hall. This time of night? Now, he said again. Be quick about it. Dress warm. I'll fetch the horses. It was weeks before we knew Alifair wouldn't die. And from the night me and Calvin knocked on Aunt Betty's door and a light appeared behind the window and Rose started throwing clothes on, she didn't need convincing to come home. Alifair was took sick. It was enough. As we rode through the March night, all she asked of Calvin was how bad Alifair was and what the doctor had said. How can she care? I asked myself. Alifair had been nothing but mean to her since the whole business with Johnson began. It was a part of Roe I could not understand. I supposed it was the part that had loved a man and had his baby, and buried it on a knoll behind the hill. I wanted to understand, but I couldn't. Ever since the death of her baby, Roe was someplace inside her I couldn't go. When we got home, she ran in to help Ma like she'd never been away. Time she slept, she settled right into her old bed in our room, though she didn't sleep that much. Trinvilla and Adelaide were put in the parlor. I wasn't allowed in Alifair's room, but I stood outside and saw Roe run to her, saw how Alifair reached out her arms, saw them embrace. For many a night after that, I woke up to find Roe's bed empty. I'd get up to walk out into the hall, and there I'd see the shadow of Roe on the wall in Alifair's room, cast larger than life by a lantern. Nothing seemed real anymore. People moved about the house at night. Alifair continued to moan and thrash. Ma prayed aloud and walked around like she was under a spell. I worried that Roe would get the typhoid. Who would tend her? What would I do if she died? Pa and the boys stayed out of the house as much as they could. They were doing the spring planting. Adelaide did the cow milking. Trinvilla washed the dishes. I cooked. I was somewhat of a fair hand at it. Tolbert's wife, Mary, let me help when I visited. Alifair never would at home. I made a right smart venison stew, too, though Calvin had to cut up the meat for me. I was a fair hand at quail, too. My brothers brought in 2, and I rubbed them all over with butter, salt, and pepper and put them in a pan until they got nice and brown in our stove oven. Mary kept us in fresh baked bread and pies. Nobody complained about my cooking. Nobody complained or fussed very much about anything. What seemed to be happening, if you put your mind to it, was that we were all getting along in our house, helping each other. We talked in soft tones. Even Trinville and Adelaide behaved and told me my cooking was near as good as Ma's. Do we have to have death at the door, I wondered, for us to get on? But most of all was the change in Ro. She'd come to us pale and in mourning. In the weeks in which she nursed Alifair, color came to her cheeks. She was eating, something Aunt Betty said she hadn't done since the baby died. She was filled with purpose. Pa didn't talk to her. No, he never said one word to her face, but neither did he badmouth her. They just sort of moved around each other real careful-like. One day, after he'd been to Pikeville, Calvin handed Ro a note. She read it and shoved it into her apron pocket. Nobody asked about it, but I think everybody was hoping it wasn't from Johns. Fanny, Ro told me in our room that night, for the first time since little Sarah died, I feel like I have a reason for living. Soon's Alifair's on the mend. I'm a-going to Martha Klein's over to Pikeville. She's got 6 little ones, and they got the typhoid. She's asked me to come and help her tend 'em. Suppose you get sick, I asked. I won't. How can you be sure? 'Cause I don't care if I die, Fanny baby. And God don't take people like that. It means that living for such a person is a worse punishment. God wants me to be punished. Why? Why, for what I did to this family, she said simply. For the way it's tore us apart. We're all tore apart, Fanny. And that's another reason I can't stay. She left the 3rd week in April to attend Martha Klein's family. And she didn't get typhoid. And she never once spoke of Nancy being wed to Johns, Hatfield. Alifair recovered. We went back to school. I thought it an oddment that Alifair, with all her powers and her healing meetings, had needed Ro, a sinner, to make her well. But nobody else thought of that. And soon as Alifair was up and about, she was back in the kitchen talking over and bossing me around, mean as a hornet, all over again. Once, when she found out I hadn't scrubbed a certain pot after using it, she even hit me. I wish you'd have died, I shouted at her and ran out of the house. Nobody cared that she hit me. Things were back to the way they always were. Page 143, chapter 23, August 1882. If people hereabouts recollect Election Day of 1880 as the day my sister Rosanna ran off with John Hatfield, they will always mark Election Day of 1882 as the time of the big trouble. The day commenced with a heavy morning mist that everybody said would burn off and become heat. They were right. The heat lay on us all. So did the bugs and the mood of trouble, because the Hatfields were coming. The past summer had been quiet, with nobody fussing at anybody, but underneath you could sense that everybody was just awaiting for some trouble they couldn't put a name to. If we get through Election Day, we'll be right as rain, they were saying. Everybody knew Devil Anse and his kin were coming. That put the hex on Election Day, of course, and made everybody nervous as an ugly girl at a box supper auction. I was 9 then, and old enough to get a purchase on the feeling. The end of August is a bad time anyways. People are tuckered out from the summer farm work. The harvest is still not yet in, and they're strung tighter than a fiddle string about to break for too much plucking. My brother Floyd was first to alert me. I was up at his cabin because I was to help him bring his whiskey and toys. Right off, I saw he was loading no whiskey into the wagon, but I didn't ask why. Instead, I asked why Devil Anse and his people were even allowed to come to our elections. Don't they have their own elections in West Virginia? It was then that Floyd told me why they'd always come. Old Devil Anse tries to run things in Pike County elections. Why, you'd think one of the officers in our sheriff's department is a Hatfield. Devil Anse buys votes. And this year, he's boating his own whiskey across the tug. Warned me not to bring mine. If that don't rile me, I don't know what. Did you tell Pa? Course not. Ain't we had enough trouble? What trouble comes this year won't be on my account. Everybody turned out. Everybody excepting Johnson, Nancy Hatfield, and my sister Ro, of course. I missed Ro something awful. And I stayed on my lone most of the time, not joining in the kid games. After all, I was 9 now, tall for my age, and I toted a lot of miseries. I was nobody's toady to be told to run a sack race or play toss and catch. Watching the little kids play their games, I thought about my sister Ro. She was an oddment. That was a given. There was Adelaide still studying to be a granny lady, and Alifair still going to meetings to heal people, and without any of their foolishment, Ro was going around regular like now and taking care of sick people, wherever they were. She was so busy I scarce saw her these days. Elections went on normal enough that day, with Hatfields at one end of the field and McCoys at the other. In the middle was the dance platform. My brother Bill commenced to play Sourwood Mountain, and right off Tolbert started in a dancing. Nobody could dance like Tolbert. Everybody clapped for him and told him to dance some more. Right then, Black Elias Hatfield, brother of Devil Anse, stepped onto the platform and started running his mouth. They called him Black Elias because he always dressed all in black. Ain't there room for a Hatfield on this dance floor? He asked. Soon's you pay me the $5 you owe me, Elias, Tolbert said. Elias got all stiff then, like he had a bone in his throat. What money's that? He asked my brother. And right off you could tell they weren't talking about money. That money was the last thing they were talking about. But Tolbert went on to remind him about the debt. Elias just laughed, of course, and saw how Tolbert should try to come and get it from him. Which around these parts is spoiling for a fight, even if you aren't a Hatfield or a McCoy. Everybody backed off, the music stopped, and mamas started grabbing their children. Tolbert and Elias went at each other like a coon dog and a possum. Men in back of the crowd were taking bets. Elias was bigger than my brother, but he was drunk on Hatfield whiskey, and soon he was laid out on the dance platform. The Hatfields didn't cotton to this at all, naturally, and soon Elias's brother Ellison stepped onto the platform, and more insults were traded as these two had at it. Some women screamed as blood was drawn on both sides. I got feared for Tolbert. He was all wore out. Finally, Ellison got a hold on him, one of those holds that could break a person's neck. Everybody in the crowd gasped. But then, quicker than a June bug, Tolbert got a knife from somewhere on his person and started slashing at Ellison, who would have killed him then and there if he could. My brother Bill rushed onto the platform and started slashing Ellison too. There was blood all over the place. I saw my brother Jim standing there watching, but he made no move to stop it. From somewhere way behind me, I heard Ma's voice praying. Even though he was cut up like a hog on butchering day, Ellison landed Tolbert a blow on the head that knocked him flat. Tolbert lay still. Then Ellison grabbed up a piece of log from the end of the platform and raised it to dash Tolbert's brains out, but Farmer stepped up with his Smith & Wesson and fired. The shot echoed like the sound of God's fist. Everybody screamed and then got real quiet like. Tolbert bestirred himself, got up, and stood real wobbly. Then Mary came and took him off the platform just before Devil Anse Hatfield stepped up and bent over his wounded brother. Devil Anse near went crazy then. He started shaking like he had the palsy, reaching for his gun and fired at Farmer. He missed, and that made him even crazier. He cussed up a storm and grabbed Farmer. But before you know it, John Hatfield, who was a sheriff's officer just like Jim, grabbed Farmer and arrested him. "I'm a-taking you to the jail in Pikeville," he said. Next thing you know, Tolbert broke away from Mary and came to stand with Farmer. "Where's the other one?" John Hatfield asked. He directed his question at the crowd, but nobody answered. My brother Jim then decided it was time to act. "I'm senior officer," he told Hatfield, "and I'll take him in hand." But the Hatfield sheriff's man would have none of it. "Do you think, Jim, that I'll turn McCoy's over to you? Now, where's the other one?" Then somebody was dragging my brother Bud over. "I didn't do anything," he was saying. Bill came forward. "'Tweren't Bud, it was me," he said. By now that Hatfield officer was so confused he couldn't have told a bear from a bobcat. He started in asking the crowd who did the knifing, Bill or Bud, while Jim stood there grim and waiting. But nobody knew. Bill and Bud looked too much alike. Some people allowed that it was Bud, so Officer Hatfield took Bud and left Bill standing there with his mouth open. "I'm a-going along with you all," Jim said. Then my brothers Sam and Floyd said they were going, too. Officer Hatfield looked like he had all he could handle. He didn't object. "Pa McCoy, don't let them take them," Mary begged. "No need to worry, Mary," he said. "No Kentucky jury will convict a McCoy for killing a Hatfield, and I'm a-ride into Pikeville now to get a lawyer." He rode off. The crowd separated, mumbling and carrying pieces of the fight home with them, like the ham and chicken in their baskets. They would feed on it for a long time. "It's not a jury or lawyers I'm worried about," Mary told me. "It's those darn fool Hatfields. They'll kill those three. Doesn't anybody know it?" "Jim's with them," I reminded her. She put her hand on my shoulder. "How would you like to come home with me tonight, Fanny?" she asked. "Please, keep me company." I asked Ma, and she said yes, so I went along with Mary. Sun was setting, but in the woods it was already dark with shadows as we hurried along with baby Cora. Mary wrung her hands and worried, and I comforted her. It would be all right, I said over and over. Jim was with them. But I knew it wasn't all right. I knew it true before we got to Mary's house. Because there in the darkened woods, rushing around and hissing, I saw the yeller thing. We're going to end our reading for the night there. And I hope you can tune in tomorrow. Thank you for reading along with Ann Rinaldi's The Coffin Quilt and Mrs. Evinger's Reading Nook. Make sure you give this video a like and tune in next time. Thanks, y'all.